This week, we're talking twin development at 11 months with twin mum Zoe Brown and twin mum and well baby clinic nurse Tasha Perreard. Zoe shares what life looks like right now, from army crawling and big personality differences to starting daycare. Stick around and you will learn how to support crawling right now with a simple hack like a towel hammock, but also core strengthening exercises. And we'll also talk about when to get help if crawling hasn't happened by 12 months. We also talk about how to use the feeding window of opportunity to build adventurous eaters. And we'll also include key allergens that many parents miss, like sesame and shellfish, and how to add those into your baby's diet. And then finally, we talk about daycare coughs and constant colds, because that's what happens when they start daycare. We talk all about practical immune support and about vaccinations. So if you are parenting twins, or in fact any baby approaching 1 year old, this episode will give you reassurance and clear steps that you can use today. So let's get into it.
Welcome to Sense by Meg Faure, where we make sense of the science and art of parenting. Parenting is grey, gritty, and beautiful all at once. And my life's work as a healthcare professional is helping parents feel more confident in a season that can feel really overwhelming. In each episode, we share honest conversations with real mums, dive into the science with experts, and simply make sense of it all in practical ways. This is your space. You're not alone, you're held. So let's unpack the journey of a lifetime with sense. Welcome back, mums and dads. And this week, it is a fabulous week again because we have got our regular guests, our twin mummies, both of them, Zoe Brown and Tasha Perreard. Welcome, both of you. It's so good to have you. So Tasha is a nurse in the Western Cape and runs a very busy well baby clinic. For those of you who haven't listened to previous episodes with her, she really is a voice of wisdom in the parenting space in Cape Town, or globally now when she's on the podcast. And of course, she is a twin mum. So when we heard that Zoe Brown, who is a celebrity in South Africa, was having twins, we thought we actually have to do a twin episode. And this twin episode has turned into probably about 15 twin episodes, it feels like. Zoe, how old are the boys now?
Can you believe it? They are turning 1 in March. So we've almost been doing our podcast recordings for a year. It is so crazy how quickly the time has gone, but I feel like since the last time I've spoken to you and now they have just gotten so busy, exponentially so. We are crawling, but not on hands and knees. We are crawling on our tummies. We are basically sailing everywhere. But they are growing and we've started daycare. So that's something that's been massive in this household. We're only going for 3 days a week, but it's I think they need that socialization. They need that stimulation that I feel like I can't give them. And let's be honest, I need a break.
Yes, we all know that one for sure, Zoe. So let's start with unpacking with each of those. So tell us a little bit about their development, because you kicked off with crawling. So they've obviously been sitting since around 6 months, if I remember correctly. And I can remember them like starting to scoot already like a month or so ago, trying to get around. So tell us a bit about their crawling.
So we are army crawling. Arms, the little legs are moving left and right, so at least both sides, but they're just not going onto their knees. Jordan is the baby that did not want to sit, and now he can go from sitting to moving around sitting, so he can get himself back up. He's had moments where he goes onto his knees, he rocks a bit, but then when it comes to the crawling, he drops the hips and he just goes on his tummy. Maybe in the last 2 to 3 weeks, Luke has finally learned that he can also move. He used to get onto his tummy, hated it, and would just scooch backwards. But he was my sitter from the beginning. And their first day at daycare, there was a bit of an orientation where I had to leave them for half an hour and put him on the floor. He was playing with toys. When I got back, the teacher said to me, Jordan scooted around everywhere. He explored the whole space. Luke sat exactly where I left him, and he just continued to play with the toys.
That's so funny. So I'm going to hand it over to Tasha just now, but I'd like to just clock in on that crawling a little bit. So first of all, so they're around about 10 and a half months. Is that correct?
We are 11 months.
11 months. Okay. So crawling typically would happen round about, certainly by this time. So we're wanting to get them crawling before they start to decide to walk, because they will start to walk closer to a year. So in terms of crawling, I've got a couple of little suggestions there. One is there's a lovely activity where you take a towel and you lay it kind of in a kind of almost like a sausage on the floor, and you lay them with their chest over the sausage, and you pull that sausage up kind of almost to create a hammock between their hips and their knees. And it just supports them in that kind of crawling position, in that 4-point kneeling is what we call it. And in that 4-point position, they can then start to rock a little bit and start to move. And then as they start to actually hold themselves up a little bit, you can actually start to release the hammock a little bit, so they're actually taking the weight themselves. And that's quite a nice activity that I would recommend that you do every day at the moment. Also, interestingly, if they're not able to hold themselves up in that crawling position, it's often an indication that their tummy muscles are a little bit on the weak side. So what I would do is I would have like little activities where they have to kick balls away. So, like if you're in yoga or Pilates and you're having to like do those leg lowering that kill our abs. So that's what we're wanting to do. We're wanting to give them some little ab exercises. So you can have little things for them to be able to kicking balls away, hanging balloons while they're lying on their back so they can kick it. So practicing those type of things are also really nice ideas. And then just the last thing I do want to mention is we often see babies not wanting to crawl or not having the strength in their core muscles to crawl if they've been sitting in seated positioners. Now, I don't think that you're doing that with them, but if they are in things like walking rings or bumbo seats or any of those, that can also make tummy muscles a little bit, kind of lazy. So I don't know, are you popping them in any of those at the moment?
We did at one stage just because they were showing a lot of frustration of not being able to move. But because of their frustrations, since they've been able to scoot around, we've barely put them in the walking ring. But we did have those. I think that was my next question. I know you shouldn't compare babies, but if I do look at the mom circle of friends that I have, a lot of their babies are younger and they're all going on the all fours. Some of them are pulling themselves up onto furniture and standing. And I had coffee with them and I was thinking, oh my goodness, we are not there yet, but I'm not comparing. I'm not going to be worried. But then I see them pulling themselves up and I'm like, okay, thank goodness we're not there yet, because I don't know if I'm ready for that chaos that comes with when they're that mobile. But yeah, I think my biggest thing is, when should intervention take place?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So first of all, comparison is the thief of joy. I think Roosevelt said that. And so you mustn't compare. And babies are so vastly different. And often twins just do things in their own time. They also entertain each other so much that they don't have the same urgency to get on with their milestones. So I wouldn't worry about them not crawling yet. Although, as I said, do those activities I said. The pulling up to walking is actually something you definitely don't want to focus in on. If they walk even as late as 18 months, it's all considered within the normal range. So don't worry about the pulling up to stand. I would say that getting them to crawl in the next month would be fabulous, if we can do that. I don't know, Tasha, do you have any input on that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess everything you've said, I mean, there's such a broad range of normal. I mean, it's incredible to see some babies start crawling at 7 months and some closer to 12 months, but certainly by 12 months, if they're not crawling, we are kind of flagging it a little bit. And it's credible to see, we often refer babies to physios or occupational therapists. And within a few sessions, of going to see those professionals, these babies are, and they don't look back. So it's so important not to compare your babies, as Meg said, especially when there's two of them. And, often your one boy will be ahead of the other boy, and constantly comparing yourself to other children is, it's going to be very, very challenging not to do that as a parent. But you've just got to look at the range of normal. Also, what's quite a nice exercise to do, kind of similar to rolling up the towel underneath their little tummies, is to actually, for you to sit, or somebody to sit on the floor with your legs kind of in a V position, and then they kind of hang over your leg, and then you tuck their little leggies underneath. Because as you said, one of them, as soon as they get onto their legs, they just splay down like a little starfish. So if you are holding their little legs underneath them and they're hanging over your legs, it's also quite a nice practice to kind of, for them to get to feel what it's like to get their legs underneath them. So it's something also that to flag is that some people think that bum shuffling is so cute. And a lot of babies sit really beautifully and everyone celebrates that. And then they start wiggling around and then they don't get onto all fours. So the fact that your boys are even just leopard crawling and being on their tummies, it's fantastic. A lot of babies don't like doing that. So the fact that just leopard crawling is wonderful. But if your baby, for the listeners, if your baby is bum shuffling, please, please, please don't encourage it. It's so important for them to build those core muscles, that upper body strength, for them to be on their tummies and leopard crawling and spending lots of time on the floor. And as Meg said, we want them to spend more time on the floor, more time crawling than actually standing up and walking. We get so excited when our children start walking. We don't want them to miss the crawling phase. It's so important for, everything they do in later life, sitting in a desk, writing, playing, crossing their midline. It's just really important that they spend as much time as crawling. Even though it's easier in a way for them to be walking, because on the floor, everything's so messy and their little knees get messy and they're putting everything in their mouth, and it feels so much easier when they're walking. But lots of crawling, lots of floor time is really, really key at this stage.
Yeah, I thank you for that input, Tasha. That is so true. And I do just want to pop back to something that Tasha said, is when do you look for intervention? And of course, you've mentioned that as well, Zoe. My little girl my middle child was a little bit like Luke and was very happy to sit and watch the world go by. And when she did go into her tummy, she actually started to do that little aeroplane thing where her arms went up, legs went up, and she was kind of almost like a banana shape lying on her tummy. And I realized that at that point, she wasn't developing her tummy muscles. She had great back muscles, but her tummy muscles weren't being kind of developed. And so at 10 months, I did take her for physio. And exactly like Tasha said, it was 3 sessions of physiotherapy, NDT Physio, got her tummy muscles going. And within a week, she started crawling. It was super quick. So, it could be that maybe you do want to just, go and chat to physio. It's quite important that whether it's a physio or an OT, that they are NDT trained. And it's probably just a session or two and they get on their way. So, yeah, not a bad idea.
So NDT being neurodevelopmental therapy.
So that's kind of development. Tell us what's going on either in terms of sleep or feeding. Have you had any challenges or wins in those spaces?
I feel like our feeding has become a big win. We were maybe on the slower side to transition to various textures. Finger foods have always been offered. It's only maybe the last 2 to 3 months that they've really started enjoying the finger foods. I've started serving their food bite-sized, so because they've mastered the pinching skill, so they can pick up the small little pieces and put it in their mouths. Something I am finding that Jordan tends to do is I don't think he realizes when he is full. And it's quite funny because I dropped them off. This has only been our first week at daycare. And yesterday I dropped them off at school after they've had their cereal and their first bottle for the day. And I see on the app that he had a morning snack and he ate it all before his nap. So he's definitely just saying yes to all the food coming his way. Whereas Luke is very good at, he's full, he's done, he shows me all the signs he doesn't want any more food. But the other evening, I made some cottage pie, something that myself and Robbie would eat, and the boys absolutely loved it. So for me, it felt like a win that I was finally able to make food that we would eat as a family. And they enjoyed it. So we're slowly getting there.
Can I just add, no, so at this age, it's such an important thing for you to start eating with them if you can. A lot of people still focus on baby foods and keeping everything quite bland. But now's the window of opportunity before they become, some fussy toddlers and picky eaters. Now's the window of opportunity to just give them almost everything. At 12 months old, there's nothing they can't eat. So anything that you eat as a family, they can absolutely start eating as well. Can I ask you about the allergen foods, and have you introduced all the allergens at this stage?
Yes, I've done all the allergens. We haven't had any reactions. The funny thing is every time Robbie kisses the boys, because he's got a bit of a stubble, they always have a bit of a reaction. So I panicked when I saw a bit of a reaction on one of the baby's chests. And I'm like, my love, is this a reaction to the allergy or did you kiss them? He's like, no, he kissed them. I was like, oh, okay. So, but allergy-wise, I've introduced all the major ones and we haven't had any reactions, which I'm very grateful for. I do know that some moms have by the 5th or the 6th introduction noticed the reaction. I've just continuously been adding things and we haven't had any reactions, which I've been very grateful for.
When you mentioned the main allergens, there's quite a lot of allergens that people don't know about. So, for example, sesame, soya, gluten, shellfish. So a lot of people don't think about doing shellfish. It's something a lot of people only kind of figure out later on in their life or in their toddler years when there's a little prawn slipped in somewhere. But all those things like sesame oil or tahini or hummus, all those things, and soya, the things that a lot of people don't realize. Also, all the nuts. So some people only introduce peanuts. So you've got to do cashews, macadamias, almonds, all the tree nuts as well. So make sure those are ticked off on your list too.
Sesame is quite easy to add in if you add in some tahini into some hummus or something. So that's a very good piece of advice, Tasha. And I love what Tasha said. I think you used the word window, but this is a window of opportunity. And, all little ones become picky eaters when they're toddlers, just for a million reasons. A, they need less fuel, so they just start eating a little bit less, which makes us think that they're being picky eaters. B, they've got very strong wills, the way they want to, and the meal place is one of the places where they can kind of push the boundaries. But we have this window now where they actually are so open to exploration. And, I think what is great is to have lots of different textures as well, lots of different colors as well. And then definitely moving them on, like you said, to family meals. One of the things that we also love to have is some social eating. And for most people, they feed their babies separately at this age, and then they and their partner or their husband or whatever have a mealtime together separately later. But what is really great is if you can start to prioritize just one dinner a week and maybe one lunch a week over the weekend, where they're actually sitting on your laps or in a high chair next to you and you're all eating together, because it's just such a, eating socially is such a benefit. And actually, often that is what happens at daycare, is that they are eating socially because all the other little ones are also having snacks at the same time. So social eating is worth focusing on at this stage as well.
You were asking about the sleeping. The last time we were talking, we had a few issues with Luke. He was very disruptive. He was, I think, going through a leap. And what we actually found out, apart from this separation anxiety and the little bit of a sleep leap that he went through, he was actually getting cold at night. So where Jordan would in the evening sleep in a 1-tog sleep sack, we've been putting Luke in a 2.5, and we've had beautiful evenings ever since we've just increased how we dress him at night.
That is super, super interesting. I mean, not something that that we very often see, because most of us actually sleep better if we're slightly cooler. But the fact that you problem solved that is amazing. Is he your sensory seeker, Luke? He is, isn't he? Or is he sensory sensitive? No, he's sensory sensitive. He's a little bit more sensitive, isn't he?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Which completely makes sense, because he was obviously feeling the environmental impact.
Yes.
Yeah. Very interesting. And they're both sleeping well now.
We are sleeping well, except for first week of daycare, and these boys have snotty noses and a horrible cough. I've never had to deal with a cough before. We've had snotty noses in the past, which, you bring out the little snot sucker and the saline spray, and it's just awful because they see that thing and they start crying. But it's the first time we're dealing with the nighttime cough. And when they were on their Nurture One pillows, they were at a bit of an angle. So when they did get sick the first time, they slept relatively well. But I've now taken the wedge from that pillow and I've shoved it underneath Luke just to elevate him slightly. And that is helping. But it is a hard one, because what can I do for a baby that has a bit of a cough?
Today's Dose of Sense is brought to you by ParentSense, the expert-based parenting app that gives you daily support from pregnancy to sleep, feeding, and daily routines. Take the guesswork out of parenting. Download ParentSense today and use the code SENSE50 for 50% off.
What can I do for a baby that has a bit of a cough?
So I'd love to hear Tasha's response to this afterwards, but when we talk about medications, you do need to be careful with little ones, and particularly cough medications. But there is one cough medication which is really, really fabulous, and it's actually homeopathic, and it's called Stodol, and it's manufactured by Perreard, and it's a very quite a thick liquid, and I can never work out if it's just the thickness of it that soothes the throat and stops the postnasal, or whether or not it actually really the homeopathic does work. But that is something that can be used with babies, and that I really, really like as a little bit of a cough soother, because we don't really use cough suppressants at this time. Tasha, what is your recommendation with coughs?
Yeah, so the recommendation really isn't to give any cough medicine under the age of 2. So under the age of 2, you don't want to suppress their cough. You want them to cough. You want to kind of get all that mucus out of their little lungs. The only cough mixture, I guess, which you can really use here in South Africa is Prospan. So also it's kind of a herbal medication, but certainly nothing stronger than that. You don't really want to do that before 2. I think a lot of the time babies cough because they've got a postnasal drip. So there's lots of mucus running down their little back of their throats, and that kind of stimulates them to cough the whole time. So the most important thing is you just saline, saline, saline. So what we want that mucus to thin a little bit. We want it to certainly suck it out of their little nasal passages. So kind of, 3-4 times a day, if you want to, you can just saline spray their nose. There is also something called ACC in South Africa, which also is a mucolytic, which thins the mucus as well. So you can get some syrup for babies too. I don't know if you get that in Australia, but that is recommended. You can give that so basically from 6 months old, you can do that as well. I was going to say something about immune boosting. So going to daycare, I mean, it's, as you said, the moment they go to daycare, they get sick. And this is why I sometimes don't recommend starting daycare until you really have to, but also starting daycare not in the winter months, because the minute you get into daycare, you will obviously. So yes, it's good to, for them to be exposed to those little bugs so that they can build their immune system, but it is very, very difficult. So things that I kind of recommend to boost immune systems are vitamin D, zinc. You can give them some zinc. Also, there's echinacea. So I'm a big fan of echinacea. When they're a little bit older, there's some little echinacea junior, little chewy tablets which they can take. And then I'm a big, big advocate of the flu vaccine. So the flu vaccine, flu season starts from end of March to the end of kind of September, sometimes even October, November. So recommended from 6 months onwards. So if you can give them a flu vaccine, for me, it's a no-brainer. It's so important because these babies get so sick, and there's so many babies who are hospitalized every year because of the flu. So if you can vaccinate them against the flu, it's 100% I would encourage that.
And I love that you've mentioned that, Tasha, because I think there's some incorrect controversy, particularly actually around the flu vaccine. I don't know if you saw that in America, one of the large flu producers who's just testing one of their flu vaccines has been refused a trial in America because, for the crazy medical system is deciding that flu vaccines aren't important. But the reality is a sick baby is difficult to manage, and you don't want your babies to be sick. So vaccines are so important. There's also, I saw this morning in the news, an outbreak of measles in London, which should never happen. Measles should have been eradicated if people were vaccinating properly. So definitely do look at the vaccinations. Are you up to date with all your vaccines, Zoe?
We are up to date. We even did the meningococcal B vaccine, which came highly recommended here in Australia. We are actually due their 1-year vaccinations now in March. So we weren't allowed into daycare without being up to date with our vaccinations.
Yeah, that's the way it should be. So I want to just, before we finish off, I want to just mention something that's coming. So we've obviously got the 1 year coming up, and that means that there are a couple of things that usually happen around about a year of age. So one is that sometimes little ones walk. The average age for walking for boys is 14 months. But as I said earlier, they can walk as late as 18 months and we don't worry. So don't push the walking, but that is coming up. Another thing that's coming up is there's going to be a cusp age with sleep, which is quite interesting. And what happens with that is that they're probably currently on 2 days sleep. So one at around 9 or 10 in the morning and one at around 1 or 2 in the afternoon. And between 12 and 14 months, they actually drop down to 1 day's sleep. And you'll know that they're ready for that because they start to do things like wake at 4 a.m. or fight the afternoon sleep because they don't want to go down because they've had the morning sleep, or fight bedtime at night because they've had both sleeps and they don't want to go down. And somewhere between 12 to 14 months, most little ones need to drop to 1 sleep. it is a little bit challenging because they actually can't make it through the morning without having a sleep, and they can't make it through the afternoon if they've only had one sleep. So it's kind of a little bit of navigation that happens at around about that age. Tasha, what do you advise mums with regards to that kind of 12 to 14 month sleep change?
Yeah, it's a bit of a tricky stage, and every day will potentially be different. So some days they'll still be on one sleep. Well, some days they'll still be on two sleeps. Sometimes they'll be on one sleep. So you just have to be very flexible during that stage. Also, what I always recommend is you try and push out the morning sleep by kind of half an hour and then another 45 minutes and then an hour. So you're just pushing it until eventually it's kind of around 12-ish. And then, you just got to bring bedtime earlier. So, for example, if they wake up from their one sleep at about 1 or 1:30 and they used to be going to sleep at about 7, you just have to bring bedtime earlier. Some people are terrified of doing that because they think, well, if I put my baby to sleep at 6, they're going to wake up at 4 in the morning or 5 in the morning. But it doesn't often affect the time that they wake up in the morning. So don't get panicked if you do have to put your baby to sleep a little bit earlier. I mean, yeah, if they're going to bed at 6 and you've got the whole evening to yourselves, that is wonderful. So yeah, just be flexible in that. And as I said, but there's also depends what time your baby wakes up. I mean, there's some babies who at 18 months are still on 2 sleeps. I mean, for example, my son did that because he woke up at 4:45 every morning. And for months and months, and there was no way that he was going to be able to push, until lunchtime because he woke up so early. But there are some amazing babies who wake up at 7:30 or 8, and then that's going to be way easier for them, obviously, to transition to one sleep. So what time are your boys waking up in the morning these days?
Luke wakes up anytime from 6:15 to 6:30. And if I leave there, especially if he wakes up at 15:15, I just leave him, and then sometimes he dozes off again. So I would say 6:30 is maybe the time they would wake up. Some days I only go into their room at about 7.
Well, it's been so lovely to chat with you both again, Zoe. It's been very special tracking your boys' development. I mean, for those of you who never heard Zoe's birth story, you have got to go back and listen. It was a natural vaginal twin delivery, which is super unusual, and especially the way that it happened. So do go back and listen to that episode. And Zoe, I think the next time we chat to you, they will be a year of age. And so enjoy it. And yeah, happy birthday for them next month.
They will be cobblers.
So precious.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Thank you very much. And thank you for always just being my reality check with everything. I really appreciate it.
It's a real pleasure. Thank you, Tasha, for joining us. So I really appreciate your wisdom.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks,
Thank
Zoe.
you. Congratulations, Zoe.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope today's conversation brought you a little more clarity, calm, and confidence on your parenting journey. If you enjoyed the episode, please do share it with a friend who needs to hear it today. And also go and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss out on an episode. I'll be back next week with another episode, same time, same place, and always here to support you. And in the meantime, download the Parent Sense app to take the guesswork out of feeding, sleep, weaning, routines, and everything in between.